All right, students. So, welcome to your JavaScript class. And here we're going to be doing a small JavaScript refresher as to how some of these things work, since it might have been a little bit of time since some of you guys have touched JavaScript. So, the program that I decided to go ahead and do is we're going to be doing a leap year calculator. So, we're going to be seeing how to go ahead and calculate a leap year. So basically, these are the steps that we need to follow, right? So in order to make any program, first you need to understand how it works. So in here, the first step we need to go ahead and here is to see if the number is evenly divisible by 4. If it is, then we can go to the next step and to see if the number is not evenly divisible by 100. If both of these conditions are met, then that means that that is a leap year. However, if the number is evenly divisible by 100 as well, then we need to go ahead and divide it by 400 in order to see if that number is actually a leap year. If the number is evenly divisible by 400, then obviously our year will be a leap. So following these set of steps, we will go ahead and actually make a program out of it. All right, so I'll go ahead and create a new file, and I'll call it index.html. And here, if you do HTML, you'll get this little code snippet generator, and we can go ahead and select HTML5, and it'll generate this code for us. We'll just change the title here real quick. Then in the body, I'll just create some tags so we can work with. Nope. Your calculator, then we'll create an input in order to receive our value. We'll change that to number. And we'll add a button. And calculate. And we'll go ahead and actually just add a little bit of style. Well, not style, but your year is. And underneath that, we'll just add another h1 tag for the results. All right. So as it stands, it's a very simple HTML file. Where is it? Could have sworn I had that plugin installed, open wipe server. And it just opens up wherever it wants. All right, so here we go. So this is going to be our small calculator. As you can see, nothing really fancy, and right now we go ahead and click this, nothing happens, right? Well, that's what JavaScript is for. So in here, in order for us to actually work with JavaScript, first we need to go ahead and add a JavaScript tag. So we'll do just script, if I could type, and then we'll select the source. Now we actually need to go ahead and create a file. So I'll do new file, and I'll just call it app.js. And this is going to be our JavaScript file. Now, obviously in here, I need to source it. So I'll say app.js. If this was inside of a folder, we would add the correct pathing to it as well. All right, so now let's just make sure our connection to JavaScript works. So we'll just do alert and hello. All right, so there we go. And there we go. So we get hello. Now let me just push this over to the side. I'll go ahead and close this out so it doesn't keep pestering this. All right. Well, one thing to remind you guys, in my case, I have autosave enabled. If you do not have this enabled, you'll have to hit Control or Command S every time on your Mac in order for your changes to save and go ahead and actually reflect over on your live server. Or if you don't have the live server application on, then you just need to go ahead and refresh the application, right? Well, back to the actual program at hand. In order for us to actually be able to affect any of these or to interact with these HTML elements at all, we need to add some identifiers to them. And you might remember this from your first JavaScript class. But basically, you can do it through the CSS classes or you can do it through IDs, right? In this case, we'll do it through IDs since we don't have any CSS styles and we're not really going to add them for this application. So in this case, I'll create an ID. This one is going to be, I'll just call user input, like so. Then the button, we're going to give it an ID of btn. Yep. And finally, for this tag, we'll do ID of results. So by calling these IDs over in our JavaScript, we'll be able to actually interact with this system, right? So over here, what I like to do is create first my constants. In this case, we could say constant user input equals document dot get element by ID. And obviously, we'll also go ahead and call. And one thing to note in here, you can use double quotes or single quotes. It doesn't really matter. And we'll go ahead and call it user input. Then I'll create another variable, constant, and then I'll call this btn equals document dot get element by ID, and we'll call over the button btn. And finally, we'll get the result, const result equals document dot get element by ID. Result. There we go. All right. So with this, we basically have a bit half of our program done already. So what I'll do in this case is grab my button, so btn, and then I'll add a event listener. So I'll do add, and as you can see here, we have add event listener. In this case, the event we want to listen for, and you can see we have a lot of elements in here, but obviously the one we want in this case is click. And I would suggest how I look through these so that way you can see other elements that you would like to have. In this case, the most used one obviously is the click one. Now in here, the second parameter the add event listener expects is a function. Now you can create a function the usual way, meaning that outside of here you could say function and then is leap, and that would be the name of it. And then obviously in here we would go ahead and create our code for this. Now, while there is nothing wrong with this, and obviously in here you would just call is leap, like so, and that would work, right? And just demonstrate alert, and then we'll do hello again. So if I bring this over, I hit calculate, you see hello, right? So again, there's nothing wrong with this way of doing it, but since we're going to be moving into React, I'll be showing you a different way of doing these event listeners, and it would just call the arrow function, right? So the first part is you actually need to go ahead and declare that you're doing a function. So we'll open up some empty parentheses in this case, since we're not actually taking any parameters. Then we'll do the arrow function, and then we'll add the brackets in there, right? So now you'll see that I have my brackets in here for my function. So technically all we're really doing is creating our function in here. And this would actually be the same if we were to write function and the name of the function and do it in here, right? So it's just a different way of doing it. You know, JavaScript, due to its flexibility, allows you to do things in many ways, and that is both a good and a bad thing. Just for right now, take into consideration that by having it this way, it's much easier, or at least it's going to be much cleaner for us, all right? So in order for us to actually get anything from the user input, first we need to go ahead and grab it as a value. So what I'm going to do is create another variable in here, and I'm going to call this year equals, and then we're going to say parse int. Obviously, all years are going to be integer values, and I'm going to open up parentheses, and I'm going to pass in result user input dot value. All right. So now if we go ahead and see what's inside of our just to make sure everything is working correctly. So as you see, I click this, nothing happens. I'll pass in a value in here. Click this, nothing happens. But obviously that's because we need to go into the inspector and in the console, and there you'll see we're actually getting a value back, and you'll see the counter, for example, in here. Now, I'm using Firefox, For those of you, I would suggest any browser that you want to use is good, except for Safari. Safari is Apple's little toy, and they don't like other people messing around too much with things. So I've seen where some of them do have the inspector, others don't. Like again, just to continue inspector, right click, inspect. Okay. So in this case, it is working. We are getting back the values that we want. So now we can actually go ahead and actually do the logic of this code, right? So like I said, the first part that we need to go ahead and verify is to see if the number is evenly divisible by 4. So in this case, we can do it if, then open up parentheses, open up another set of parentheses, and you say year module by 4. And then also, save space, you can go ahead and just clump it up together like that. And we can say, if that is evenly divisible, meaning that it's going to return a 0, and we'll open up another set of parentheses to encompass the entire equation, year module by 100 is not equal to 0, then we can come in here and say result dot inner text equals, and then we can just write a message in here as plain text. So we can say this, it is a leap year. Right? Because again, we're satisfying the necessity of it being divisible by 4 evenly, I might add, and it not being divisible by 100. So if we come back here and run this again, this is my calculator. Yep, it is. So in here we can say 2020 was a leap year. So if we hit calculate, it is a leap year. There we go. Now if we put 1999 on it, obviously nothing happens because we haven't programmed the case for that just yet, right? So in here, if this is divisible by this, and this is divisible, not really evenly divisible, it is going to be a leap year. Then we need to do our else if scenario, right? So in here, let's assume that this condition is not met. We'll have this in here, but assuming that this is like so, right? Else if this is still evenly divisible and this is also evenly divisible, then we need to do a third step, right? Which is divide the element by 400 to see if it's actually a leap year. I hate when it does that. Jesus Christ. There we go. All right, so in here we'll do if, and then we can just say year modulus 400 is equal to 0. And then we'll grab this, put that in there, and then I'll do else, and we'll just do the negative of this. It is not a leap year. With that out of the way, we can just come back over here, just have else all the way outside of our system, and then just paste this in there again, like so. So just to recap, let's see. If the year is evenly divisible by 0 and it is not evenly divisible by 100, it is going to be a leap year. Else if the year is evenly divisible by 0 and it is evenly divisible by 100. I'm sorry. You know what I meant. If it is evenly divisible by 4 and evenly divisible by 100, then we need to verify that it is also evenly divisible by 400. If that is the case, that it is a leap year. If that is not the case, that it is not evenly divisible by 400, then it is not a leap year. Then we come to the else of our main structure, meaning that if it's not evenly divisible by 4, or this, then it is not a leap year, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and test it out. Let's bring our calculator over, refresh this. I'll do 2020 that we know is a leap year. It is. So I'll do 1999. This is not a leap year. Let's check 1987. Not a leap year. 88. It is a leap year. So every leap year goes in order of force. So technically in here, 1992 is a leap year. 1996 is a leap year. 2000 is a leap year. For example, 2001 is not a leap year. So there we go. So that is our first application using JavaScript. Again, this is just a quick refresher as to how to work with some of these elements. Again, we're working with the DOM, and we'll go into, there will be another video where we go into full depth. And in full depth, I just mean like a course reminder how to use these things. Obviously, like I said, since we're going to be working with React, this is not that important to remember, but we will be redoing this application in React so you can see the difference. Now, obviously, there's not going to be a whole lot of difference in terms of the code because obviously we still have our main logic like this, right? No, that'll be it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.